A single father, a 6-year-old girl with a heart too big for this world, and a broken woman on a bench clutching the last photograph of someone she'd lost forever. What happened next on that ordinary Saturday morning at a Portland bus stop would change 3 lives in ways none of them saw coming. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The alarm didn't go off. Nathan Cross jerked awake to sunlight streaming through bedroom curtains that should have been replaced months ago, his internal clock screaming that something was wrong. The red digits on his nightstand glared back at him. A.M. Emma's soccer practice started at 900. Emma, he called, stumbling out of bed in yesterday's wrinkled t-shirt. Emma, we're late. No answer. He found his 6-year-old daughter in her bedroom, still in pajamas, sitting cross-legged on her unmade bed, with her stuffed elephant clutched against her chest. She was staring out the window with that distant expression that had become too familiar over the past 18 months. "Hey, sunshine," Nathan said softly, kneeling beside her bed. "We've got soccer this morning. Remember, Coach Martinez is expecting you." Emma looked at him with eyes that held too much sadness for someone who'd only been alive 6 years. Eyes exactly like her mother's. "I don't want to go. You love soccer. I don't want to do anything." Nathan felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the same helpless feeling that had been his constant companion since Lisa died. He'd read every parenting book he could find, talked to Emma's teacher, even considered the therapy that his brother Derek kept pushing. But nothing seemed to reach the parts of his daughter that had gone quiet when her mom's car was hit by a drunk driver on a rainy Tuesday evening. "Okay," he said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "How about we skip soccer and go to the farmer's market instead? Get some of those apples you like." For the first time all morning, Emma's face showed a flicker of interest. The farmer's market had been Lisa's tradition, something she'd started when Emma was 3. Every Saturday morning, rain or shine, they'd walk through the stalls together, Lisa teaching Emma how to pick the best produce, how to talk to vendors, how to be part of a community. Nathan had kept the tradition alive because it was the only time Emma smiled anymore. "Can we get honey sticks?" Emma asked. "We can get whatever you want." As Emma slowly got dressed, Nathan made coffee with hands that shook more than they should. The kitchen counter was covered with the debris of single-parenthood unpaid bills. Emma's artwork from school medicine bottles from the panic attacks that had started 6 months ago. A sticky note from Derek with the name of another child psychologist. The medical bills were the worst part. Not just from the accident, those had been covered by insurance, but from everything that came after. The grief counseling he couldn't afford but couldn't live without. The medications to help him sleep, to help him function, to help him be present for Emma when everything inside him wanted to shut down. His phone buzzed. A text from Derek called 3 times yesterday. "Emma can't keep missing school. We need to talk." Nathan deleted the message without responding. Derek meant well, but his older brother had opinions about everything. Opinions about how Nathan was raising Emma, about the small house in southeast Portland that Derek thought wasn't good enough, about Nathan's refusal to move closer to Derek's family in Lake Oswego. "You're not thinking clearly," Derek had said just last week. "Emma needs stability. She needs professional help, not whatever this is you're doing." What Nathan was doing was surviving. Some days that felt like an achievement. Emma appeared in the doorway, dressed in jeans and the purple sweater Lisa had bought her last Christmas. She was holding her stuffed elephant and looking at Nathan like she was waiting for him to disappoint her. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, and they headed out into the grey November morning that was typical of Portland. The kind of weather that matched Nathan's mood, most days overcast, drizzling just enough to be annoying, uncertain whether it would get better or worse. As they walked the 6 blocks toward the Division Street Farmers Market, Emma slipped her small hand into his calloused palm. The gesture was so much like something Lisa used to do that Nathan had to fight back tears. Daddy Emma said quietly. Why do people have to die? It was the question she'd been asking in different ways for 18 months, and Nathan still didn't have a good answer. I don't know, sweetheart. But I know that even when people die, the love doesn't go away. It just lives in a different place. Where Nathan squeezed her hand gently. In here, he said, touching his chest with his free hand. And in all the good things we remember about them. Emma was quiet for several steps. Then, do you think Mommy knows we still go to the farmer's market? Yeah, baby. I think she knows. They turned on to Division Street, and that's when Nathan saw her. The bus stop wasn't crowded that Saturday morning. Just one person sat on the weathered bench, a young woman with blonde hair tangled around her face, wearing worn clothes that looked like they'd been slept in. She was crying. Not the loud, attention-seeking kind of crying, but the silent kind, the kind that comes from somewhere so deep that words can't reach it anymore. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched a crumpled photograph in her trembling hands, staring at it like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. Nathan's first instinct was protective not of the woman, but of Emma. His daughter had been through enough pain. She didn't need to see more of it. Didn't need another reminder that the world was full of suffering and loss. He gently tried to steer them to the other side of the sidewalk. Daddy Emma whispered, tugging on his hand. That lady is really sad. I know, baby, but sometimes people need space when they're upset. They were almost past the bus stop when Emma stopped walking entirely. She let go of his hand. Emma Nathan started, but his daughter was already moving toward the bench with that determined walk she got when she'd made up her mind about something. Sarah Mitchell had been homeless for 6 months, but she'd been broken for longer than that. The photograph in her hands showed 2 women at a Christmas dinner table, laughing, their faces bright with joy. One was clearly a younger version of herself. The other was older, with the same blonde hair and warm smile her mother taken just 2 Christmases ago, back when Sarah had a job and an apartment, and a future that made sense. Today would have been her mother's 55th birthday. Sarah had spent the morning walking the streets of southeast Portland, visiting all the places she and her mother used to go together. Powell's Books, where her mother would spend hours in the gardening section, the coffee shop on Hawthorne, where they'd meet every Sunday after church, the bench in Laurelhurst Park where her mother used to feed ducks while Sarah complained about her job or her relationships or whatever seemed important at the time. All of it was gone now. Her mother dead 8 months from pancreatic cancer that moved like wildfire through her body. The job at Multnomah County Library lost when Sarah took too much time off to care for her dying mother. The apartment they'd shared forfeited when Sarah couldn't make rent on unemployment benefits that barely covered groceries. 6 months of sleeping in shelters when beds were available in doorways when they weren't. 6 months of learning which restaurants threw away day-old food, which gas stations would let you use their bathrooms, which streets were safe to walk at night, and which ones would get you arrested, or worse. She'd been sitting at this bus stop for over an hour, not waiting for a bus. But because it was the only place she could sit without being moved along. The photograph was her only possession of any value. Everything else had been sold or stolen or lost in the shuffle from place to place. She was considering her options, none of them good, when a small voice cut through her despair. "I think you need a hug," the voice said. "Can I hug you?" Sarah looked up, startled to see a little girl in a purple sweater standing in front of her. The child had brown eyes that seemed too serious for her age, and arms already opening in offering. Behind the girl, a man in work clothes was hurrying over his face, tight with the kind of protective concern that Sarah recognized from her months on the streets. Most people looked at her like she was dangerous, diseased, something to be avoided. But this little girl was looking at her like she was just someone who needed a hug. Sarah's face crumpled. Fresh tears spilled over, but something in them had changed. For the first time in months, someone was offering her kindness instead of judgment. She nodded, unable to form words, and the little girl wrapped her arms around her as far as they would go. "It's okay," the child said softly, patting Sarah's back. "My daddy says crying helps the sad come out so happy can come back in." The girl's father reached them just as Sarah let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. She gently hugged the child back, her shoulders shaking. For the first time in what might have been days or weeks, someone was touching her with kindness instead of suspicion or disgust. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice raw. She pulled back from the girl, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'm not usually." "No apologies needed," the man said quietly, and something in his voice made Sarah look at him more carefully. There was understanding there, not pity. He sat down on the bench beside her, keeping his daughter between them, a father's caution that Sarah completely understood. "I'm Nathan," he said. "This is my daughter Emma." "Sarah," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's a pretty name," Emma said with the straightforward honesty of childhood. "Why are you so sad?" Nathan started. But Sarah shook her head. "It's okay." She looked down at the photograph in her hand, then held it out so Emma could see. It showed the two women at Christmas dinner, their faces bright with joy. "This is my mummy. She died 8 months ago." Emma studied the picture with the serious attention children give to important things. "Is that why you're crying?" Sarah nodded, her throat tight as she fought back another wave of tears. Today would have been her 55th birthday. The words hung in the air between them. Nathan felt something crack open in his chest, that specific kind of recognition that only comes from shared loss. He knew exactly what it felt like to have the calendar turn into a minefield of painful anniversaries. "I'm sorry," he said, and the way he said it made Sarah look at him more closely. There was understanding in his voice, not pity. "You get it," she said. Not a question, a statement. Nathan nodded slowly. 18 months now. Some days are easier than others. Most days aren't easy at all." Emma squeezed Sarah's hand. "My mummy went to heaven too. Daddy says she's watching us from the stars." Sarah's eyes filled again, but she managed a sad smile. "What was your mummy like?" "Daddy says she was really good at making pancakes and she always sang when she was happy." "Daddy says I got her eyes." Nathan put his hand on his daughter's shoulder, steadying himself as much as her. They didn't talk about Lisa often. It still hurt too much. But Emma was right, she did have her mother's eyes. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. Beneath the worn clothes and tangled hair, he could see someone who'd once had a different life. There was education in the way she spoke, careful articulation even through the tears. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" he asked gently. Sarah's jaw tightened. Pride warred with honesty in her expression. "Different places," she said carefully. "The shelter when there's room. Sometimes there isn't room." "What about food?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Emma looked up at her father with those big, knowing eyes. "Daddy, she's hungry." "I know, baby." Nathan made a decision that would change everything. "Sarah, we're heading to the farmer's market. Would you like to join us?" "My treat." Emma never lets me pick the right apples anyway. Sarah hesitated, every survival instinct she'd developed over the past 6 months, screaming at her to be careful, to not trust too easily. The streets had taught her that kindness usually came with strings attached, with expectations she couldn't meet, with prices she couldn't afford to pay. But there was something about this man and his daughter that felt different, safe, real. The way he'd said, "I'm sorry" about her mother, not the empty condolence most people offered, but with the weight of someone who understood. The way he'd sat down on the bench instead of looming over her. The way his daughter had asked to hug her without fear or judgment. "I don't want to be a burden," she said quietly. Please, Emma said, still holding her hand. You can teach me how to pick the good apples. Daddy always gets the mushy ones. Despite everything, Sarah laughed. A real laugh that surprised even her. I guess I'm an apple expert now. Nathan smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from him. Consider yourself warned. She's very particular about her produce. They walked the 3 blocks to the farmer's market together, an unlikely trio. Emma positioned herself between Nathan and Sarah, holding both their hands, chattering about everything and nothing. I'm in 1st grade, Emma announced. My teacher is Mrs. Patterson, and she has a really loud voice, but she's nice. My best friend is Maya, and she has a dog named Biscuit. Do you like dogs? I love dogs, Sarah said, finding herself genuinely engaged for the first time in months. I used to have a golden retriever named Charlie when I was growing up. What happened to Charlie? He lived to be 14, which is really old for a big dog. He died when I was in college. I want a dog, Emma said with the longing that only children can pack into 3 words. But Daddy says we're not home enough. Nathan caught Sarah's eye over Emma's head and shrugged apologetically. Long work days, he explained. Construction. I'm usually gone 10 hours and Emma's in after-school care until 6 most nights. Sarah heard the guilt in his voice, the same guilt every working parent carried, but single parents felt more acutely. That's really hard, she said, managing everything alone. Some days are better than others, Nathan said, echoing his earlier words about grief. As they walked, Sarah found herself studying Nathan's profile when he wasn't looking. He couldn't be more than 35, with calloused hands that spoke of physical work and lines around his eyes that came from squinting in the sun. There was something solid about him, dependable. The kind of man who showed up for his responsibilities even when it was hard. How long since you ate something warm? He asked quietly, while Emma was distracted by a street musician. Sarah's step faltered slightly. Tuesday, I think. Maybe Monday. The days kind of blur together. The admission hung between them stark and honest. Nathan felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at whatever series of circumstances had led someone educated and capable to sleeping on streets and going days without food. What did you do before he asked, then caught himself? Before things got difficult, I mean. Before I was homeless. Sarah finished for him without bitterness. It's okay. I worked at Multnomah County Library, children's services mostly. Did story time on weekends, helped with reading programs, worked with kids who were struggling in school. A ghost of pride crossed her face. I have a degree in library science from Portland State. What happened? Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching Emma skip ahead to look at a window display. My mom got sick. Pancreatic cancer. It moves fast, and the treatment is expensive. I took time off to take care of her, used my sick days, then my vacation days, then started missing shifts because she needed round-the-clock care those last few weeks. She swallowed hard. I got let go 3 weeks before she died. Lost the apartment 2 months after that. Couldn't afford it on unemployment, and the medical bills had taken everything we'd saved. Nathan knew that spiral. If not for his union construction job with health insurance, if not for Derek helping with childcare when Lisa died, he could have easily ended up in the same place. I'm sorry, he said. That's not fair. Life rarely is, Sarah said with a slight shrug. Then she looked at him directly. But it's strange. 8 months of barely surviving, and today on what should be the hardest day, your daughter hugged me like I was worth something. And now I'm walking to a farmer's market like a normal person having a normal Saturday. You are a normal person, Nathan said firmly. Circumstances don't change who you are. Before Sarah could respond, Emma ran back to them, grabbing both their hands. We're here. Come on. They have the good donut stand. The farmer's market was alive with Saturday morning energy. Vendors called out about fresh produce, artisan breads, handmade crafts. The smell of coffee and pastries filled the air, mixing with the earthy scents of vegetables and herbs. Sarah felt something twist in her chest as they entered the market. Longing, maybe. A memory of a different life when coming to places like this was normal, not a luxury she couldn't afford. "Apple stand first?" Emma announced, pulling them toward a booth overflowing with different varieties. "Sarah, you have to show me the good ones." At the apple stand, something magical happened. Sarah came alive in a way Nathan hadn't seen yet. She picked up an apple, examined it carefully, then handed it to Emma. "See how it's firm when you press it gently," she said, guiding Emma's small fingers. "No soft spots. And look at the color. This variety should have a deep red with these yellow undertones. That means it got enough sun." She held it up to Emma's nose. "Smell the stem end. Smells fresh, right? Not fermented or sweet in a bad way." Emma inhaled deeply and nodded completely, captivated. "That's a good apple. That's a perfect apple," Sarah declared, and placed it in their bag. They went through the process with a dozen apples. Sarah teaching Emma, learning, Nathan watching with something warm spreading through his chest. His daughter was laughing, really laughing. And Sarah, for these few minutes, seemed to forget whatever darkness had brought her to tears on that bus stop bench. "How do you know all this?" Nathan asked. "My mom and I used to come to farmers' markets every Saturday when I was Emma's age," Sarah said, her voice soft with memory. "She grew up on a farm in eastern Oregon before she moved to Portland for nursing school. She taught me everything about picking produce, about seasonal eating, about supporting local farmers." Her eyes went distant. "I haven't been to a market since she died. Couldn't afford it. Daddy, can we get donuts?" Emma pointed at a stand where fresh donuts were being made, the smell of fried dough and cinnamon sugar wafting over. "Of course, baby." As they walked toward the donut stand, Sarah started to hang back, and Nathan noticed immediately. "You're getting a donut too," he said gently but firmly. "Nathan? I can't. When's the last time you had something warm and sweet?" She didn't answer. "That's what I thought." He ordered 3 donuts and coffee for all of them, handing Sarah hers with a look that brooked no argument. When she bit into the warm pastry, Nathan saw her eyes close. The expression on her face was almost painful to watch, gratitude mixed with grief, mixed with the simple pleasure of warm food. They sat on a bench while Emma watched a juggler perform, and Nathan found himself studying Sarah more closely. She ate slowly, savoring each bite like it might be her last. When she caught him watching, she blushed and looked away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have no idea what this means." "Actually, I think I do." An idea had been forming in Nathan's mind for the past hour. It was probably crazy, definitely impulsive, but something about this woman, her story, the way Emma had immediately connected with her, the recognition of shared grief, it all added up to a decision that felt both reckless and right. "Sarah," he said carefully, "I want to ask you something, and I need you to really think about it before you answer." She looked at him warily. "Okay. I have a garage apartment. It's a studio above our detached garage in the backyard. The last tenant moved out 6 months ago, and I haven't had time to list it again." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It needs some work cleaning, maybe some paint, but it has heat, running water, a small kitchen. It's not much, but it's weatherproof and warm." Sarah's eyes widened. "Nathan, I can't pay rent. I'm not asking for rent." Nathan interrupted. "I'm asking for help. I don't understand." Nathan looked over at Emma, who was applauding the juggler enthusiastically. "I work construction, long hours, early starts. Emma's in after-school care until 6 most days, and she hates it. It's just TV and snacks in a church basement. No real attention, no help with homework." He turned back to Sarah. "I come home exhausted most nights, too tired to do anything but heat up chicken nuggets and fall asleep during bedtime stories. Emma deserves better than that." "You want me to be a nanny?" "I want a fair trade," Nathan corrected. "Room and board in exchange for childcare and some light housework. You'd have your own space, your own life. But you'd be there for Emma when I can't be. He met her eyes. You said you ran children's programs at the library. You know how to connect with kids. Emma already trusts you, which is rare. She's been cautious around strangers since her mom died. Sarah was silent, her mind clearly racing. The offer was so far outside anything she'd dared to hope for that she couldn't quite process it. I know this is sudden, Nathan continued. I know you don't know us, and we don't really know you. But sometimes you have to trust your instincts. And right now, I think we could help each other. Why would you do this? Sarah asked, her voice thick with emotion. You don't even know me. Nathan thought about that question. I know you're educated. I know you're grieving someone you loved deeply. I know you took care of your sick mother even when it cost you everything. I know my 6-year-old daughter, who has better instincts about people than most adults, wanted to hug you the moment she saw you. He paused. And I know what it's like to need someone to throw you a lifeline when you're drowning. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face again, but these were different from the ones at the bus stop. These carried hope instead of despair. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll think about it, Nathan said. The offer stands. No pressure. I'm not trying to be a hero or play savior. I'm just a single dad who needs help offering help to someone who needs it. Sarah stared at Nathan like he'd just offered her the moon. After 8 months of being told she wasn't worth minimum wage, wasn't trustworthy enough for a job at a fast food restaurant, wasn't clean enough to volunteer at the food bank, this man was offering her a home, not just shelter a home. Fair trade, she repeated, her voice barely audible. What would you call it? She looked at him for a long moment, then at Emma, who was now trying to juggle invisible balls in imitation of the performer. I'd call it the kindest thing anyone's done for me in a very long time. Emma ran back over powdered sugar coating her nose. The juggler was so cool, he caught 5 balls at once. Daddy, can you juggle? Not even close, baby. Emma looked between her father and Sarah, her 6-year-old intuition picking up on the emotional weight in the air. Is Sarah okay? She looks like she's been crying happy tears and sad tears at the same time. Nathan felt his throat tighten. His daughter's emotional intelligence never ceased to amaze him. Yeah, sweetheart. Sometimes people have lots of different feelings all at once. Like when I miss Mommy, but I'm also happy to be with you. Exactly like that. Emma studied Sarah's tear-streaked face, then wrapped her small arms around Sarah's waist in another spontaneous hug. I'm glad we found you today. Sarah closed her eyes and hugged the child back, feeling something fundamental shift inside her chest. Over Emma's head, she looked at Nathan. Could I have some time to think about your offer? Of course. Take all the time you need. I don't have a phone, Sarah admitted quietly. Nathan pulled out his phone and a receipt from his pocket, writing down his number. The Belmont Library opens at 10 tomorrow. Emma and I go to Sunday story time there at 10:30 every week. If you want to talk more, find us there. Sarah took the receipt, folding it carefully like it was precious. The Belmont Library. 10:30. No pressure, Nathan emphasized. If you decide it's not for you, no hard feelings. But if you want to give it a try, we'll make it work. As they prepared to part ways, Nathan and Emma heading home. Sarah to whatever shelter might have space that night. Emma tugged on Sarah's coat. You'll come tomorrow, right? To the library. Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, really looking at this small girl who had somehow changed the entire trajectory of her day with one simple question and one offered hug. You know what? Yes, I'll be there. Promise. Emma held out her pinky. Sarah linked her pinky with the child's feeling, the simple trust in that gesture, like both a weight and a gift. I promise. That evening, as Nathan tucked Emma into bed in their small two-bedroom house, she looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, why did you invite Sarah to live with us?" Nathan sat on the edge of her bed, thinking carefully about his answer. Emma was young, but she was smart. She deserved honesty. "Remember last month when you had that bad dream about monsters and you said hugging Mr. Bunny made you feel safer?" Emma nodded, clutching the worn stuffed rabbit that had been hers since birth. "Sometimes grown-ups need that too. Not the stuffed animal part, but people to remind them they're not alone when things are scary." He smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Sarah lost her mommy, and she doesn't have anybody to help her feel safe right now, like how Derek and Aunt Jennifer helped us when Mommy died." Emma's eyes widened with understanding. "Are we paying it forward?" It was a phrase Nathan had taught her when they donated old toys to the children's hospital, passing on the kindness others had shown them. "Yeah, sweetheart, we're paying it forward." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said something that made Nathan's heart clench. "I think Mommy would like Sarah. Why's that?" "Because Mommy always said the best way to heal your own hurt is to help heal someone else's. Remember, she said that when we took flowers to Mrs. Patterson after her husband died." Nathan did remember. Lisa had said those exact words just 3 months before she would die unexpectedly in an operating room. The memory hit him like a physical blow. "You're absolutely right, baby. Mommy would like Sarah very much." After Emma fell asleep, Nathan sat in his living room nursing a beer and wondering if he'd made the right decision. Inviting a stranger to live on his property to care for his daughter, it could be seen as reckless, even dangerous. But something in his gut told him this was different. Sarah wasn't a threat. She was someone drowning who needed someone to throw her a rope. And maybe, just maybe, helping her would help heal some of the broken pieces inside himself and Emma. He pulled out his phone and texted Derek. "Did something potentially crazy today? I'll explain tomorrow, but I think it might be a good kind of crazy." Derek replied immediately. "This better not involve motorcycles or online poker." Nathan smiled, despite himself. "Neither. I'll call you tomorrow after I know if it's actually happening." Sunday morning came grey and drizzling. Typical November weather in Portland. Nathan was nervous as he cleaned the garage apartment, swept out. The dust washed the windows, made sure the heat worked and the hot water ran. The space was small, maybe 400 square feet, but it had a kitchenette, a full bathroom, and enough room for a bed and some furniture. If she came. If she agreed. At 10:27, Nathan and Emma walked into the Belmont Library. Sunday storytime didn't start until 10:30, and Nathan found himself watching the entrance. His heart rate elevated in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine. "Do you think she'll come?" Emma whispered, holding his hand. "I don't know, baby. But if she doesn't, we'll still have story time." "Okay." Emma nodded, but Nathan could see disappointment already forming in her eyes. At 10:29, the library door opened. Sarah walked in, and Nathan felt his breath catch. She'd managed to shower somewhere, maybe at a community center, maybe at a truck stop. Her blonde hair was still damp, but combed neatly. She'd changed clothes, though Nathan suspected she owned very little. When she saw them, her expression was nervous but hopeful. Emma spotted her immediately and ran across the library, which earned them a sharp look from the librarian. "You came. You kept your promise." Sarah caught the flying 6-year-old in a hug, closing her eyes as she held the child. Over Emma's head she met Nathan's gaze. He smiled and mouthed, "Thank you." She mouthed back, "Thank you." The story time was about a lost cat finding its way home. And Sarah sat with them. Emma nestled between her and Nathan. Afterward, they walked outside into the cool November morning. "I thought about your offer all night," Sarah said. As they stood on the library steps, "I barely slept, just kept turning it over in my mind. And Nathan asked gently, I want to say yes, but I need you to know something first. She took a deep breath. I have nothing to offer you except my time and my effort. I don't have references anymore. The library wouldn't give me one after I was let go. I don't have professional clothes. I've been surviving on the streets for months, and that changes you. She looked down at her hands. I'm not the same person I was before my mom died. None of us are the same people we were before loss. Nathan said quietly. Change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's just different. I don't want to let you down. Or worse, let Emma down. Nathan thought about that for a moment. Here's what I propose. 1 week trial. You stay in the apartment, help with Emma, and we see if it works for all of us. No strings attached. If after a week you want to leave, or if I feel it's not working out, we reassess. No hard feelings either way. Sarah looked at him like she couldn't quite believe he was real. That's more than fair. That's incredibly generous. So is that a yes? She smiled the first real, full smile he'd seen from her. Yes, it's a yes. Emma whooped and did a little dance right there on the library steps. Sarah's coming to live with us. Daddy, can we show her the apartment now, if Sarah wants to see it? I'd love to, Sarah said, and Nathan heard the relief in her voice. 1 more night off the streets. 1 more night with a roof over her head and a locked door between her and the world. The garage apartment wasn't much to look at, but watching Sarah walk through it was like watching someone discover treasure. She ran her hand over the small kitchenette counter, tested the faucet, and watched the water run clear and hot, sat on the old futon that served as both couch and bed. It's perfect, she whispered. It needs work, Nathan said honestly. The paint is old, that futon probably needs replacing, and the heater can be loud. It's perfect, Sarah repeated, turning to face him with tears in her eyes. Nathan, you have no idea. I've spent the last 6 months sleeping in doorways under bridges in 24-hour restaurants until they kicked me out. Her voice broke slightly. Having a door that locks a bed that's mine, a bathroom where I don't have to worry about being attacked, this is perfect. Nathan felt his own eyes burning. I'll get you some sheets and towels. There's a mini fridge under the counter, and I'll stock it with basics. I'll be there when Emma gets home from school, Sarah said immediately. At 3:30. I won't let you down, Nathan, I promise. I believe you, he said, and strangely enough, he did. The first week was an adjustment for everyone. Monday afternoon, Sarah stood outside Bridal Mile Elementary at 3:25, her hands shaking with nerves. She'd spent the morning walking the neighborhood, familiarizing herself with the route from Nathan's house to the school timing. How long it took noting the safest places to cross streets with a 6-year-old. When the bell rang and children poured out of the building, Sarah spotted Emma immediately. The little girl's face lit up when she saw Sarah, and she ran over with her backpack bouncing against her small frame. You're really here, Emma said, throwing her arms around Sarah's waist. I told everyone about you. Maya wants to meet you. A blonde girl with pigtails appeared beside Emma, studying Sarah with the frank curiosity of childhood. Are you the lady who's living in Emma's garage? I live above the garage, Sarah corrected gently. Like an apartment. Cool. My mum wants to know if you're a relative. Sarah felt her cheeks flush. She'd prepared for this, other parents asking questions, making assumptions. I'm helping take care of Emma while her dad works. Like a nanny? Something like that. Maya seemed satisfied with this explanation and ran off to find her own ride home. As Sarah and Emma walked back to the house, Emma chatted about her day, her teacher the boy who got in trouble for pulling hair the art project they were starting tomorrow. Sarah found herself genuinely engaged, asking follow-up questions, remembering details. This was what she'd missed most about her old job, the natural curiosity of children, their unfiltered observations about the world. At home, they sat at the kitchen table for homework. Emma pulled out worksheets and readers, spreading them across the surface, with the dramatic flair of someone who took school very seriously. "I have to read this story and answer questions," Emma announced, sliding a thin book toward Sarah. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm a good reader, but sometimes the questions are tricky." Sarah looked at the book, a simple chapter about a girl and her pet turtle, and felt something familiar stir in her chest. This was her element. This was what she knew how to do. "Let's read it together first," she suggested. "Then we'll look at the questions." 20 minutes later, Emma had not only answered all the comprehension questions, but had started writing her own story about a turtle who went on adventures. Sarah watched the child's face as she worked, noting the way Emma bit her lip when she concentrated, the way her left-handed grip made her writing slant across the page. "You're a wonderful writer," Sarah told her. "Mrs. Patterson is right. You are a good reader, but you're also creative." Emma beamed. "Mummy used to say I had a big imagination." It was the first time Emma had mentioned her mother without prompting, and Sarah felt the trust implicit in that sharing. "Your mummy was right," Sarah said softly. When Nathan came home at 6:15, dusty and tired from a day of pouring concrete, he found them in the kitchen. Sarah was stirring something that smelled like actual food, not the usual rotation of frozen dinners and takeout that had been his go-to since Lisa died. Emma was setting the table, chattering about her homework and her new story. "You didn't have to cook," Nathan said, genuinely surprised. "I wanted to," Sarah replied. "Besides, I saw the situation in your pantry. How much mac and cheese can one 6-year-old eat?" "You'd be surprised," Nathan said with a laugh that felt rusty from disuse. Dinner was spaghetti with meat sauce and actual vegetables, broccoli, that Emma ate without complaint, which Nathan considered a minor miracle. They talked about their days, Emma describing her art project in elaborate detail, Nathan mentioning a job site where they were building affordable housing units. "That's important work," Sarah said, and Nathan was struck by the genuine interest in her voice. "This city needs more affordable housing. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. There's nothing wrong with work that pays the bills and helps people," Sarah said firmly. After dinner, while Emma watched a approved television show, Nathan and Sarah cleaned up together. It felt natural, domestic, in a way Nathan hadn't experienced since Lisa died. Sarah washed, Nathan dried, and they fell into an easy rhythm. "How was her homework?" Nathan asked. "She's incredibly bright," Sarah said, "reading above grade level, and she has real creative instincts." "You should be proud." Nathan felt his throat tighten. "Gets that from her mom." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "She gets a lot of good things from both parents." By Wednesday, the arrangement felt less like an experiment and more like a routine. Sarah arrived at the school pickup spot 5 minutes early each day. She and Emma did homework at the kitchen table while Sarah prepped dinner. Nathan came home to lights on food cooking and his daughter laughing at something Sarah had said. Thursday evening, Emma had a mild fever. Nothing serious, but enough to make her cranky and clingy. Nathan found Sarah in Emma's bedroom reading Charlotte's Web aloud while Emma dozed against her shoulder. "She asked for one more chapter," Sarah whispered. "I didn't have the heart to say no." Nathan watched them together, his daughter finding comfort with this woman who'd been a stranger a week ago. Sarah's natural maternal instincts on full display. "Thank you," he said quietly. "She's easy to love," Sarah replied, and something in her voice made Nathan look at her more carefully. There was longing there, a maternal instinct that had nowhere to go before Emma came into her life. Friday marked the end of their trial week. Nathan had planned to sit Sarah down for a formal evaluation, but as he watched her help Emma with a particularly challenging math worksheet, he realized the evaluation had been happening all week. Emma was happier. Her teacher had called Tuesday to comment on Emma's improved participation in class. She was eating better, sleeping better, engaging with the world in ways she hadn't since Lisa died. And Nathan Nathan was coming home to a house that felt lived in again. Not just survived in, but actually lived in. So he said after Emma went to bed, finding Sarah reading a library book in the living room, "How do you feel about making this permanent?" Sarah looked up from her book, hope and relief warring in her expression. "Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything," Nathan said honestly. "Then yes," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'd like to stay." What neither of them acknowledged was how the boundaries between employer and employee were already starting to blur. The way Nathan's hand lingered when he passed Sarah the dish towel. The way Sarah's breath caught when Nathan came home from work, his shirt damp with sweat from physical labor. The way they both found excuses to be in the same room to extend conversations about Emma's day into discussions about books, politics, childhood memories. They were falling into something that felt like a family, and it terrified both of them. 2 months into the arrangement, Nathan came home to find the backyard transformed. Sarah and Emma had been planning a spring garden for weeks, poring over seed catalogs like they were planning a military campaign. But seeing it actually taking shape, raised beds filled with dark soil, neat rows marked with handwritten plant stakes was something else entirely. Emma was filthy dirt smudged across her face, her hair escaping its ponytail in muddy tendrils. She'd never looked happier. "Daddy, look, we planted everything," Emma called, running over with her arms outstretched. "Sarah taught me about companion planting, and which vegetables like to grow together, and how to tell if the soil is ready." Nathan looked at Sarah, who was equally dirty. Her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an old t-shirt and jeans that had seen better days. She looked beautiful. The thought hit him like a physical blow. She looked beautiful. "It's amazing," he managed to say. "Your daughter is a natural gardener," Sarah said, smiling, as she wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. She didn't give up even when the soil was too hard to dig. "I get my stubbornness from Daddy," Emma announced proudly. They ordered pizza that night and ate it on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the Portland sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma chatted about her garden plans, already dreaming of the tomatoes they'd eat in summer, the herbs they'd use for cooking the flowers that would attract butterflies. After Emma went to bed, Nathan and Sarah sat outside a little longer, the spring air cool but pleasant. "Thank you," Nathan said quietly, "for the garden, for everything you do for her." "She makes it easy," Sarah replied. "She's an incredible kid, Nathan." "She is. But you've helped bring her back to life in ways I couldn't. She was so closed off after her mom died, wouldn't talk about feelings, wouldn't cry, just kept everything locked inside. Now she laughs again, really laughs." "You did that too," Sarah said softly. "You're a good father. She knows she's loved." They were quiet for a moment, and Nathan felt the weight of unsaid things hanging between them. "Sarah," he began, then stopped. "I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him, suddenly nervous. "Okay. My wife, her name was Lisa. She died during what should have been routine gallbladder surgery. Blood clot to her lung. The doctor said it was rare, unpredictable, nobody's fault." The words came easier than they had in months. She went in for surgery at 9 in the morning and was gone by noon. I had 45 minutes to say goodbye, and she was already unconscious. I never got to tell her all the things I should have said. Sarah reached over and took his hand. Just held it. "I've been frozen since then," Nathan continued. "Just going through the motions. Work. Emma, survive, repeat. I didn't let myself feel anything, because feeling meant hurting, and I couldn't afford to hurt when Emma needed me to be strong. And now," Sarah asked softly, "now I'm starting to feel things again, and it scares the hell out of me." Sarah squeezed his hand, understanding exactly what he was saying and what he wasn't saying. "My mum used to tell me that grief isn't something you get over," she said quietly. It's something you learn to carry differently. The weight never really changes, but you get stronger. Strong enough to hold the grief and still have room for other things. Joy, hope, maybe even love again someday. Nathan looked at her. This woman who'd walked into his life when they both needed saving and felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen for 18 long months. "I think you're right," he whispered. They sat there holding hands as the stars came out, not saying anything more, not needing to. But their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. Derek had been watching his brother's life with increasing concern. Nathan seemed happier, more present, but Derek couldn't shake the feeling that his brother was making decisions with his heart instead of his head. "Tell me about this woman again," Derek said one Saturday afternoon. He'd stopped by ostensibly to see Emma, but Nathan knew his brother well enough to recognize an investigation. "Her name is Sarah. She helps with Emma and some housework in exchange for the apartment." "That's not what I'm asking about." Nathan looked up from the sink where he was washing dishes. Emma was in the backyard with Sarah, both of them covered in dirt from repotting herbs for the kitchen garden. "What are you asking about?" "I'm asking about the way you look at her, the way she looks at you. I'm asking about whether you've thought through what happens if this arrangement doesn't work out." Derek sat down at the kitchen table, his expression serious. "Nathan, you're my little brother and I love you, but sometimes you act first and think later. Remember when you decided to marry Lisa after knowing her for 6 months? That worked out pretty well," Nathan said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Until it didn't," Derek said bluntly. "I'm not saying it was wrong. I loved Lisa, we all did. But you're doing it again. You're letting your emotions make decisions that affect Emma's stability." Nathan turned away from the sink dish towel in his hands. "Emma is more stable now than she's been since Lisa died. Her teacher says so. Her grades are better. She's sleeping through the night. She's happy, Derek. For now. But what happens when this woman realizes she could do better than playing nanny to someone else's kid? What happens when she meets someone who can offer her more than a garage apartment and babysitting duties? Sarah's not like that." "You don't know what Sarah's like?" Derek said, his voice rising slightly. "You've known her for 2 months. 2 months, Nathan. You don't build a life around someone you met 2 months ago." Through the kitchen window they could see Sarah and Emma transplanting seedlings, their heads bent together in concentration. Sarah was explaining something with patient gestures, while Emma listened with rapt attention. "Look at them," Nathan said quietly. "Look at how happy Emma is." "I see that. And I also see what happens to Emma if this woman decides to leave. She'll have lost another mother figure." "Is that really what you want to risk?" Nathan felt anger flare in his chest. "Sarah is not going to leave. How can you possibly know that?" "Because I know her." Derek leaned back in his chair, studying his brother's face. "Oh, Jesus, you're in love with her." Nathan opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it again. The truth sat between them like a weight. "Maybe I am," Nathan said quietly. "Maybe I'm falling in love with a woman who's good to my daughter and makes me remember what it feels like to be happy." "Is that so wrong?" "It's not wrong," Derek said, his voice gentling. "But it's dangerous. For Emma and for you. What if she doesn't feel the same way? What if this professional arrangement turns into a rejected romance? Where does that leave Emma?" Before Nathan could answer, the back door opened and Emma burst in. Sarah following behind Daddy Uncle Derek, Emma threw herself at Derek, who caught her in a hug despite her dirt-covered state. "We planted basil and oregano and thyme, and Sarah says we can make pizza sauce from our own garden." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Derek said. but Nathan noticed how his brother's eyes tracked to Sarah, studying her like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Sarah. "This is my brother. Derek," Nathan said. "Derek, meet Sarah." Sarah wiped her hand on her jeans before extending it to Derek. "It's nice to meet you. Nathan talks about you all the time." Derek shook her hand, and Nathan saw him taking note of everything. Her firm grip, her direct eye contact, the way she naturally stepped closer to Emma in a protective gesture. "Sarah's the one who's been helping with Emma," Nathan said unnecessarily. "So I've heard." Derek's smile was polite but assessing. "Nathan tells me you used to work at the library." "I did. Children's programming mostly." And before that, Sarah's spine straightened slightly. Nathan recognized the defensive posture she was being interviewed, and she knew it. "I have a degree in library science from Portland State. I worked in various libraries for about 5 years before joining Multnomah County." "Interesting career change," Derek said. "From librarian to this." The pause before this was loaded, and Nathan felt his jaw clench. "Life doesn't always go according to plan," Sarah said quietly but with dignity. "No, it doesn't?" Derek agreed. "I'm sure Nathan appreciates the help." There was something in his tone that made both Nathan and Sarah tense, but before either could respond, Emma was tugging on Derek's sleeve. "Want to see my room?" "I reorganized my books the way Sarah taught me, by author, and then by height." Derek allowed himself to be dragged away, but Nathan caught the warning look his brother shot him over Emma's head. After Derek left, Nathan found Sarah standing at the kitchen sink, washing garden dirt from under her fingernails with more force than necessary. "He doesn't approve of me," she said without looking up. Nathan came to stand beside her. "He doesn't know you. He thinks I'm taking advantage of you." "Are you?" Sarah turned to look at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. "How can you ask me that? I'm not—" Nathan started, then stopped. "I'm sorry. That came out wrong. I don't think you're taking advantage of anything, but Derek has opinions about everything, and he worries about Emma getting too attached to people who might not stay." "People like me, you mean?" "People who aren't family." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying Nathan's face. "Is that what I am?" "Not family." The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Nathan found himself looking at this woman who'd become so essential to their daily life, who made Emma laugh and helped with homework and cooked dinner, and sat with them on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. "I don't know what you are," he said honestly. "I just know I don't want you to leave." Sarah's expression softened. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. "I'm not leaving, Nathan. Not unless you want me to." "I don't want you to," he said, covering her hand with his. They stood there in the kitchen, the late afternoon sun slanting through the windows, both of them aware that something was shifting between them, that the careful boundaries they'd maintained were starting to blur. Sarah, Nathan said quietly. "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too." But before either could say anything more, Emma's voice called from the living room. "Are we still making pizza tonight?" "I'm hungry." The moment broke, and they stepped apart, both a little breathless, both aware that something had changed between them, that couldn't be unchanged. 3 weeks after Derek's visit, Nathan came home to find Sarah crying in the kitchen. Not the quiet, dignified tears he'd seen that first day at the bus stop, but angry, frustrated sobs that shook her whole body. She was standing at the counter, a legal notice spread in front of her, her hands pressed to her face. "Sarah." "What's wrong?" Nathan dropped his work bag and moved toward her. "I'm so stupid," she said, her voice muffled by her hands. I thought I could outrun it, but it followed me here. Nathan looked at the document on the counter. It was from a collections agency demanding payment of $47,000 in medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment. The letter threatened wage garnishment and legal action. They found me, Sarah said, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. I don't know how, but they found me. And now they want money I don't have for bills. I couldn't pay, even when I had a real job. Nathan felt anger rise in his chest, not at Sarah, but at a system that could financially destroy someone for the crime of loving a dying parent. Have you talked to them? Tried to negotiate? Sarah laughed bitterly. I tried everything before I became homeless. Payment plans, hardship deferrals, charity care applications. They don't care that my mother died or that I lost my job taking care of her. They just want their money. She gestured at the notice. And now they're threatening to garnish my wages. All 12 hours a week of them. Nathan read through the document, his jaw tightening with each paragraph. The debt collection company was known for aggressive tactics. He'd heard stories from other construction workers who'd been targeted after workplace injuries. We'll figure this out, he said. Sarah looked at him sharply. Nathan, this is my problem. My debt. I won't let it become yours. It affects Emma. It affects all of us. Sarah shook her head. I should leave. I should disappear again before they garnish my library wages or come after your property somehow. You're not leaving. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Nathan interrupted. I understand that medical bankruptcy is the leading cause of homelessness in this country. I understand that you did nothing wrong except love your mother, and I understand that running away won't solve anything. He took the notice from her hands, folding it calmly. We're going to fight this. With what I don't have money for a lawyer. There are legal aid societies, consumer protection groups. We'll find help. Sarah stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. After 8 months of feeling completely alone in the world, the concept of we was almost too much to process. Why would you do that? Why would you get involved in my mess? Nathan thought about the question. A month ago he might have had a different answer. But now, looking at this woman who'd become so integral to their lives, who made Emma happy and made him remember what hope felt like, the answer was simple. Because you're not alone anymore. But the debt collectors weren't Sarah's only problem. Mrs. Chen had been watching the unusual household arrangement with growing disapproval. At 73, she'd lived in the neighborhood for 40 years and had strong opinions about proper family structures. The sight of an unknown woman coming and going from Nathan's house, picking up his daughter from school, acting like she belonged there, it troubled her. When her bridge club met the following Tuesday, Mrs. Chen shared her concerns. There's something not right about it, she told her friends over tea and cookies. She just appeared one day, and now she's living there like she owns the place. The child calls her by her first name, not Miss Sarah like she should. Maybe she's a relative, suggested Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived 2 blocks over. I asked Nathan. He said she's helping with childcare. But what kind of childcare arrangement involves the woman living on the property? It's inappropriate. Margaret Foster, whose late husband had been a social worker, leaned forward with interest. Have you considered calling Child Protective Services, just to make sure everything's on the up and up? Mrs. Chen had considered it. She'd thought about it every time she saw Sarah and Emma working in the garden together. Every time she heard them laughing through the kitchen window, every time Sarah walked Emma to school like she was the child's mother. I don't want to cause trouble, Mrs. Chen said. But that little girl lost her mother. She needs stability, not some woman who showed up out of nowhere. Better safe than sorry. Margaret agreed. One phone call just to put your mind at ease. Mrs. Chen made the call the next morning. Detective Riley Martinez had been working for Child Protective Services for 8 years. She'd seen every kind of family situation imaginable, from loving homes with minor concerns to horror stories that kept her awake at night. When the call came in about a possible inappropriate living arrangement, she didn't expect much. Neighbor complaints were common, usually based on misunderstandings or grudges, but the details made her pause. Single father, young child, unknown woman living on the property in exchange for childcare. No background checks mentioned, no formal nanny agreement, no references provided. It warranted a visit. Nathan was at work when Detective Martinez arrived at the house on Thursday afternoon. Sarah was in the kitchen helping Emma with homework when the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Emma called, but Sarah caught her arm gently. "Let me check first, sweetie." Sarah opened the door to find a woman in her 40s with a badge and a serious expression. "Sarah Mitchell. Yes, I'm Detective Martinez with Child Protective Services. I'd like to ask you a few questions about Emma Cross." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Is there a problem? May I come in?" Sarah wanted to say no, wanted to close the door and pretend this wasn't happening. But she stepped aside and let the detective enter. Emma looked up from her math worksheet, curious but not alarmed. To her, adults visiting during the day was normal. Teachers, neighbors, delivery people. "Hi, Emma," said politely. "I'm Emma. Are you here to see Daddy?" "He's at work. I'm here to see both you and Sarah," Detective Martinez said, settling into a chair across from them. "I want to make sure you're doing well." For the next 40 minutes, Detective Martinez asked questions that made Sarah's stomach churn. How long had she been living here? What were the sleeping arrangements? Did Emma ever spend time alone with her? What was her relationship with Nathan? Emma answered honestly and enthusiastically, describing their daily routine, their garden project, how Sarah helped with homework and read stories at bedtime. To Emma, it was just talking about her normal life. She had no idea she was being investigated. When Nathan came home an hour later, dusty and tired from work, he found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table with paperwork spread in front of her while Emma played in the backyard. "What's all this?" he asked. "CPS," Sarah said quietly. "Someone called them about our living arrangement." Nathan felt the blood drain from his face. What did they want? To make sure Emma's safe. To make sure I'm not... Sarah's voice broke slightly. To make sure I'm not some predator who talked her way into your house. Nathan sat down heavily across from her. "What happens now?" "They're opening a formal investigation. They want documentation, background checks, employment records, references. They want to interview Emma alone and you separately." Sarah looked up at him with eyes full of guilt and fear. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have known this would happen. This is not your fault. Maybe I should leave. If I'm not here, there's no case to investigate." "You're not leaving," Nathan said firmly. Then more gently, "We're going to figure this out together." But privately, Nathan was terrified. CPS investigations could take months. They could result in Emma being removed from his custody if the living arrangement was deemed inappropriate. They could destroy everything good that had come into their lives over the past few months. That evening after Emma was asleep, Nathan called Derek. "I need help," he said without preamble. "What kind of help?" "Legal help. CPS is investigating our household." There was a long pause. "Because of the woman living in your garage? Her name is Sarah, and yes." Derek was quiet for so long that Nathan wondered if the call had dropped. "Derek, I'm here. I'm just wondering how you managed to get yourself into this situation. By trying to help someone who needed help. By making an emotional decision without thinking through the consequences," Derek corrected. "Nathan, do you realize what's at stake here? They could take Emma away." Nathan felt like he'd been punched. "They can't do that. I'm a good father." "You're a good father who made a questionable decision about who to let into his child's life. From CPS's perspective, you allowed a homeless woman with no references to live on your property and care for your daughter. Sarah is not a threat to Emma. Can you prove that? Do you have background checks, employment verification, character references, anything official that shows this woman is safe to be around children. Nathan was quiet, realizing how naive their arrangement must look to outside observers. Here's what's going to happen. Derek continued. You're going to hire a family lawyer. You're going to get formal documentation of this arrangement. You're going to get character references for Sarah from everyone who knows her. And you're going to pray that CPS sees this as an unusual but harmless living situation rather than a child endangerment case. Will you help us? Derek sighed. Of course I'll help. You're my brother. But Nathan, you need to understand this could get a lot worse before it gets better. After Nathan hung up, he found Sarah standing on the back porch looking out at the garden they'd planted together. I heard she said without turning around, "We're going to fight this." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Maybe Derek's right. Maybe I should leave? Nathan came to stand beside her. Do you want to leave? No, she whispered. I want to stay here forever. I want to watch Emma grow up. I want to help her with homework and teach her to cook and be there for her first heartbreak and her graduation and all the moments that matter. She turned to look at him, tears streaming down her face. I want things I have no right to want. Nathan reached for her hand. Why don't you have the right? Because I'm not her mother. Because I'm not your wife. Because I'm just someone you took pity on who's now destroying your family. You're not destroying anything, Nathan said fiercely. You saved us. Emma was disappearing before you came. I was going through the motions of living, but not actually living. You brought us back to life. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Sarah. I'm in love with you. And I think Emma loves you too. That's not pity, that's family. Sarah stared at him, her breath catching. Nathan, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible with the investigation. But I couldn't let another day pass without telling you how I feel. I love you too, Sarah whispered. I love you and Emma more than I ever thought possible. But what if loving you isn't enough? What if they take her away because of me? Then we'll fight for her. Together. They stood there holding each other as the stars came out. Both of them aware that their love story was about to be tested in ways they'd never imagined. The formal CPS investigation began the following Monday with an unannounced visit that changed everything. Detective Martinez arrived at 8:30 a.m. with a second investigator, a stern-faced man named Thomas Wade, who specialized in cases involving potential endangerment. Sarah was in the kitchen making Emma's lunch when the doorbell rang, and the sound made her stomach drop. Emma, go brush your teeth, Sarah said quickly. I'll get the door. But Emma was already running toward the front door with the excitement of a child who loved visitors. Sarah caught her just as she reached for the handle. Remember what we talked about? Let adults answer the door first. Sarah opened it to find the two investigators with clipboards and serious expressions. Behind them, a photographer was setting up equipment. Ms. Mitchell, we're here for the scheduled home inspection. Scheduled. Sarah's voice came out as a croak. I wasn't told about any inspection. Standard procedure in all formal investigations, Detective Martinez explained. We need to document living conditions and interview the child in her home environment. Emma appeared beside Sarah, backpack on her shoulders, ready for school. Hi again, she said to Detective Martinez with a bright smile. Are you here to see our garden? Sarah and I planted carrots last week. We'd like to see everything, Emma, Detective Martinez said gently. Can you show us around your house? For the next hour, Sarah watched helplessly as strangers photographed every room, every corner, every aspect of their private life. They documented the garage apartment, measuring square footage and noting the proximity to the main house. They examined Emma's bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom, taking pictures like they were processing a crime scene. Emma chatted happily throughout the inspection, oblivious to the serious nature of what was happening. She showed them her room, her books organized the way Sarah had taught her. She pointed out the art supplies Sarah had bought the reading corner they'd created together. "Sarah reads to me every night," Emma told Detective Martinez proudly. "We're reading Charlotte's Web right now. It's really sad, but also really good." "Does Sarah sleep in your room?" Detective Wade asked. Emma looked confused. "No, she lives in the apartment above the garage. But sometimes when I have bad dreams, she comes and sits with me until I fall asleep again." Sarah watched Detective Wade make notes, and her heart sank. Every innocent detail of their life together was being scrutinized for signs of impropriety. "We'll need to interview Emma separately," Detective Martinez told Sarah, "without you or her father present. Is that necessary?" "She's only 6. It's standard procedure." Sarah felt like she was watching her world crumble in real time when this afternoon, at her school. After the investigators left, Sarah sat in the kitchen staring at the business card Detective Martinez had given her. The appointment was set for 10:00 p.m., right in the middle of Emma's favorite class art time. She called Nathan at work, her hands shaking as she dialed. "They were here," she said when he answered. "CPS, they photographed everything and they're interviewing Emma this afternoon at school." Nathan was quiet for so long that Sarah thought the call had dropped. "Nathan, I'm here. I'm coming home. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." Nathan arrived 30 minutes later, still in his work clothes, his face grim. He found Sarah pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "Tell me exactly what happened." Sarah recounted the morning's events, watching Nathan's expression grow darker with each detail. When she finished, he pulled her into his arms. "This is going to be okay," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "What if it's not? What if they decide I'm a bad influence? What if they think our living arrangement is inappropriate? Then we'll prove them wrong." But proving them wrong was easier said than done. That afternoon, while Emma was being questioned by strangers about her home life, Nathan and Sarah met with the family attorney Derek had recommended. Patricia Hawkins specialized in CPS cases, and she didn't sugarcoat the situation. "You're dealing with a perfect storm," she told them bluntly. "Single father, unrelated woman living on the property, no formal background checks, and an anonymous complaint that painted this as a potentially dangerous situation." "But Emma is happy and healthy," Nathan protested. "Her teachers will tell you that. Her doctor will tell you that." "I believe you," Patricia said. "But CPS has to consider worst-case scenarios. They've seen too many cases where children were harmed by people the parents trusted implicitly." She opened a file folder. "Here's what we need to do. First, formal background checks for both of you. Employment verification. Character references from everyone who knows your family situation. Medical records showing Emma's well-being. Academic records showing her progress." Sarah felt overwhelmed. How long does all this take? Weeks, possibly months. And during that time, CPS will be monitoring your household closely. Surprise visits, interviews with Emma. Scrutiny of your daily routine. "What's the worst-case scenario?" Nathan asked quietly. Patricia looked at him with sympathy. "Temporary removal of the child while the investigation concludes." Sarah felt the room spin. "They could take Emma. If they determine there's immediate risk, yes. But I don't think we're there yet. You have things working in your favor. Emma's obvious happiness, her academic improvement, the stability of the home environment." "What about the living arrangement?" Sarah asked. "Is that going to be a problem?" "Potentially. Unmarried adults living on the same property while caring for a child raises questions. CPS will want to ensure appropriate boundaries are maintained." Nathan and Sarah exchanged a look. They'd been carefully maintaining those boundaries for months, even as their feelings grew stronger. "We're not romantically involved," Nathan said. "This is a professional arrangement." Patricia studied both their faces. "Good. Keep it that way until this investigation is resolved." That evening, Nathan picked Emma up from school himself. She was quiet in the car, and when they got home, she went straight to her room, instead of running to find Sarah. Sarah was waiting in the kitchen, her face pale with worry. How is she confused? Scared. She doesn't understand why people are asking her questions about our family. They found Emma sitting on her bed holding her stuffed elephant and staring out the window. "Hey, sweetheart," Nathan said, sitting beside her. "How are you doing?" "The lady at school asked me lots of questions today," Emma said quietly. "About you and Sarah and our house. She wanted to know if I ever felt scared, or if anyone ever hurt me." Sarah's heart broke at the confusion in the child's voice. "Did you tell her the truth?" Nathan asked. Emma nodded. "I told her I'm happy. I told her Sarah takes good care of me and helps with homework and reads stories. I told her you're the best daddy in the world." She looked up at them with those serious brown eyes. But why was she asking, "Are you in trouble?" Nathan and Sarah exchanged a look over Emma's head. They'd agreed to be honest with her, but age-appropriately so. Sometimes when adults hear about families that look different from what they're used to, they want to make sure everyone is safe and happy. Sarah explained gently. "Are we a different kind of family?" "A little bit," Nathan said. "Most families have a mommy and a daddy living together. We have a daddy and Sarah who helps take care of you but lives in her own apartment." Emma considered this. "But we're still a family, right? Just a different kind?" Nathan felt his throat tighten. "What do you think?" "I think we're the best kind of family," Emma said firmly. "Because we chose each other." 3 days later, the investigation took a more serious turn. Detective Martinez returned with a court order requiring Emma to undergo a psychological evaluation to determine whether she showed signs of trauma or manipulation. "This is ridiculous," Nathan said, reading the paperwork. "Emma is fine. Better than fine. She's thriving." "I understand your frustration," Detective Martinez said. "But given the unusual nature of your living arrangement and some concerns that have been raised—" "What concerns?" Sarah interrupted. Detective Martinez consulted her notes. Questions about the appropriateness of an unrelated adult having unrestricted access to a vulnerable child. Questions about the stability of an arrangement based on mutual need rather than formal credentials. "Those aren't concerns," Nathan said angrily. "Those are judgments. You're judging our family based on assumptions and prejudice. Mr. Cross, I'm trying to ensure your daughter's welfare. That's my job." The psychological evaluation was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Rebecca Hartwell, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma and family dynamics, would conduct a comprehensive assessment. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her apartment looking at the main house where Nathan and Emma were sleeping, and felt the weight of responsibility crushing her chest. Her phone buzzed with the text from Nathan. "Are you okay? Saw your light on." She replied, "Can't sleep. Thinking. About what? About leaving. Before this gets worse." Her phone rang immediately. Nathan's voice was urgent when she answered. "Don't even think about it. Nathan, what if they're right? What if I'm not good for Emma? What if my presence here is putting her at risk? You're the best thing that's happened to us in 2 years. But what if that's not enough?" Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, look out your window." She did and saw him standing at the kitchen window of the main house. "Do you see that garden?" he asked. "The one you and Emma planted together?" "Yes. 3 months ago that was just dirt. Now it's full of life. That's what you did for us. You took something barren and made it grow." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "Nathan, we're going to fight this together," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes, we're going to prove that love makes a family, not legal documents or traditional arrangements. What if love isn't enough? Then we'll make it enough." Dr. Rebecca Hartwell had been conducting psychological evaluations for 15 years. She'd seen children who'd been genuinely traumatized, manipulated, or abused. And she'd also seen children caught in the middle of adult power struggles and misunderstandings. When 6-year-old Emma Cross was brought to her office for evaluation, Dr. Hartwell expected to find a confused child struggling with an unstable family situation. What she found instead was remarkable. Emma was articulate, confident, and emotionally mature. She spoke about her father with deep love and respect. She talked about Sarah with the kind of affection children usually reserved for beloved family members. When asked to draw pictures of her family, Emma drew herself standing between Nathan and Sarah, all three of them smiling with a house and garden in the background. "Tell me about this picture," Dr. Hartwell said gently. "That's my family," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Daddy, me, and Sarah. And that's our garden that we planted together. How does Sarah make you feel?" Emma considered the question seriously. "Safe and happy. She helps me when I'm sad about Mommy, and she reads really good voices when we read stories together. Do you ever feel scared when you're with?" Emma looked at Dr. Hartwell like she'd asked if elephants could fly. "Why would I be scared of Sarah? She's nice, she makes really good pancakes, and she knows everything about books, and she lets me help with cooking." For 45 minutes, Dr. Hartwell asked gentle but probing questions designed to uncover any signs of trauma manipulation or inappropriate behavior. Emma answered every question with the straightforward honesty of a well-adjusted child. "One more question, Emma," Dr. Hartwell said. As the session wound down, "If you could change anything about your family, what would it be?" Emma thought carefully. "I would make it so Sarah didn't have to live in the garage apartment. I would make it so she could live in the big house with us all the time. And I would make it so her mommy didn't die, because Sarah gets really sad sometimes when she thinks about her." After Emma left with Nathan, Dr. Hartwell sat in her office reviewing her notes. In 15 years of practice, she'd rarely seen a child so emotionally healthy and secure. Whatever was happening in the Cross household, it was working. She was preparing to write her report when something nagged at her memory. The name Sarah Mitchell sounded familiar, though she couldn't place why. That evening, Dr. Hartwell went through her old files trying to figure out why Sarah's name was familiar. It wasn't until she pulled out a file from 18 months ago that it clicked. Lisa Cross, Nathan's wife. She'd been a patient at Portland General during her final hospitalization. Dr. Hartwell remembered the case because it had been particularly tragic. A young mother dying unexpectedly during routine surgery, leaving behind a husband and small child. She'd been called in to consult on the family's grief counseling needs. But why would Sarah Mitchell's name be connected to that case? Dr. Hartwell pulled out her laptop and accessed the hospital's employee database. She had clearance to review files related to her patient's care, and something was telling her to dig deeper. It took her an hour to find it buried in the nursing shift records from the surgical ward. Sarah Mitchell, temporary nursing assistant, had been working the night shift rotation during the time Lisa Cross was hospitalized. Dr. Hartwell sat back in her chair, pieces clicking together. Sarah had been there. She'd been at the hospital when Lisa died. She might have even cared for Lisa during those final days. Was it possible that Sarah's meeting with Nathan and Emma hadn't been the random encounter they all believed it to be? Dr. Hartwell picked up her phone and called Nathan. "Mr. Cross, this is Dr. Hartwell. I need to ask you about something that came up during my evaluation. Could you and Sarah come to my office tomorrow? Is Emma okay? Did she say something concerning?" "Emma is fine. She's one of the most emotionally healthy children I've evaluated. But I have some questions about Sarah's background that I think you both need to hear." The next afternoon, Nathan and Sarah sat in Dr. Hartwell's office, both tense with anxiety. "First, let me put your minds at ease," Dr. Hartwell began. My evaluation of Emma shows a child who is thriving emotionally, academically, and socially. Whatever concerns CPS may have, Emma's well-being is not in question. Nathan felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Thank you. However, I discovered something during my research that I think you both need to know. Dr. Hartwell opened a file folder. Sarah, you worked at Portland General Hospital as a temporary nursing assistant about 18 months ago. Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, I did some part-time work there while I was still at the library. I needed extra money for my mom's medical bills. Do you remember caring for any specific patients during that time? Sarah looked confused. I worked with a lot of patients, mostly post-surgical care on the recovery ward. Dr. Hartwell pulled out a photograph, Lisa's hospital-eyed picture. Do you remember her? Sarah looked at the photo, and Nathan watched the color drain from her face. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. You remember her? Lisa Cross, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. She was my patient for 3 days before. She looked at Nathan, horror dawning in her eyes. Nathan, when we met, I didn't connect. You knew my wife. Nathan's voice was sharp, confused. I cared for her, Sarah said, tears starting to flow. After her surgery, when the complications started, I was working the night shift and she was scared. She talked about you and Emma constantly. Dr. Hartwell leaned forward. Sarah, I need to ask you directly, when you encountered Nathan and Emma at that bus stop, did you recognize them? No, Sarah said immediately. I swear I didn't recognize them until just now, seeing Lisa's picture. It was dark in the hospital, and she was sedated most of the time I knew her. I'd never seen photos of her family. She turned to Nathan, desperation in her voice. I didn't plan this. I didn't seek you out. When we met at the bus stop, I was genuinely homeless and desperate. I had no idea who you were. Nathan stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. But you remembered her afterward. After you moved into our house, Sarah was crying freely now. Not immediately. Not for weeks. It wasn't until I saw that photo of you and Emma on the kitchen counter, the one from last Christmas, that something clicked. Emma's eyes, the way you looked in the photo. I started to remember Lisa talking about her husband who worked construction, about her little girl who loved stories. And you didn't say anything. Nathan's voice was rising. I wanted to tell you, but how do you bring that up? How do you say, by the way, I was there when your wife died and I couldn't save her? The room fell silent except for Sarah's quiet sobs. Dr. Hartwell spoke gently. Sarah, what exactly happened during those 3 days you cared for Lisa? Sarah wiped her eyes, struggling to compose herself. She was post-op from gallbladder surgery. Everything should have been routine, but she started having breathing difficulties on the second night. I called for the doctor immediately, but by then the blood clot had already formed. She looked at Nathan. I held her hand while they tried to save her. She was conscious for a few minutes, and she kept saying your names, Nathan and Emma. She said to tell you she loved you, that she wasn't ready to leave, but she trusted you to take care of Emma. Nathan felt like he'd been hit by a truck. She said that those were almost her exact words. She made me promise that if anything happened, I would tell you that Emma was lucky to have you as a father, and that you would know how to help her through anything. Nathan sank back into his chair, overwhelmed. You were with her when she died. I was with her when the monitor flatlined. The doctors worked on her for 20 more minutes, but she was already gone. Dr. Hartwell watched this exchange with professional detachment, but she could see the emotional truth in both their reactions. Sarah's grief was genuine, and Nathan's shock was absolute. Sarah, Hartwell said quietly. Did you recognize Nathan specifically when you first saw him at the bus stop? No. I was so lost in my own grief that day, It was my mother's birthday. I barely noticed anything around me until Emma spoke to me. Even when Nathan introduced himself, the name didn't register. I was so focused on my own pain. She looked at Nathan. It wasn't until weeks later, when I started feeling like I belonged in your house, that memories began surfacing. Little things Lisa had said about her family. But by then, I was terrified to bring it up, because I thought you'd think I'd manipulated my way into your lives. Nathan stood up again, his mind reeling. So this whole time you've known that you were there when Lisa died, and you said nothing. I was trying to protect you, Sarah said desperately. And myself. I was terrified you'd blame me for not saving her or think I'd sought you out on purpose. Did you? Nathan's voice was hard. Did you seek us out? No, Sarah stood up facing him. Nathan, I swear on my mother's grave I did not seek you out. Meeting you and Emma was the most random, beautiful accident of my life. I was sitting on that bench planning to give up entirely, and your daughter saved me with a hug. She took a shaky breath. Finding out later that I'd cared for Lisa was the most frightening thing that's ever happened to me, because I thought it would destroy the only good thing that had come into my life in months. Nathan stared at her, trying to process everything he'd just learned. You held my wife's hand while she died. Yes. You heard her last words about Emma and me. Yes. And you didn't think I had a right to know that Sarah crumpled. I was a coward. I was selfish. I was so afraid of losing you and Emma that I convinced myself it was better to stay quiet. Dr. Hartwell intervened gently. Nathan, I understand this is shocking, but I want you to consider something. If Sarah had deliberately sought you out because of her connection to Lisa, would she have been homeless and desperate when you found her? Would she have been genuinely surprised by your kindness? Nathan thought about that first day at the bus stop. About Sarah's genuine shock when Emma hugged her about her reluctance to accept help, about the months of watching her slowly learn to trust them. I need time to think about this, he said finally. I understand, Sarah said quietly. And Nathan, if you want me to leave, I'll go. I never wanted to hurt you or Emma. You're not leaving, Nathan said automatically, then caught himself. I mean, I don't know what I mean. I just need to process this. Dr. Hartwell looked between them. I'm going to recommend that you both take some time to work through this revelation. What matters for the CPS investigation is that Sarah's care of Emma has been exemplary regardless of her previous connection to your family. She paused. But you should know this connection could actually help your case. It shows that Sarah has a genuine historical commitment to your family's well-being, not just a convenient arrangement. As they left Dr. Hartwell's office, Nathan and Sarah walked to the car in silence. The revelation hung between them like a weight, changing everything and nothing at the same time. Nathan, Sarah said as they reached the car. Please know that everything I told you about falling in love with you and Emma, that was real. It had nothing to do with Lisa or guilt or trying to replace anyone. It was just love. Nathan looked at her, this woman who had been with his wife in her final moments, who had held her hand and heard her last words, who had somehow found her way into their lives and made them whole again. I believe you, he said quietly. I just need time to understand what this means. The revelation about Sarah's connection to Lisa created a rift that neither Nathan nor Sarah knew how to bridge. For 3 days they moved around each other like polite strangers, maintaining their routine for Emma's sake, but unable to recapture the easy intimacy that had been growing between them. Nathan found himself studying Sarah with new eyes, searching for signs of deception he'd missed. Had she really not recognized them? Had her homelessness been genuine, or had she somehow orchestrated their meeting? His logical mind told him her story made sense, but his grief-wounded heart struggled to trust. Sarah, meanwhile, was drowning in guilt and fear. Every interaction felt loaded with the weight of her secret now exposed. She watched Nathan watch her, seeing the doubt in his eyes, and felt the foundation of everything they'd built together cracking beneath her feet. Emma sensed the tension immediately. "Why are you and Daddy being weird with each other?" she asked Sarah on Wednesday evening as they worked on homework. "We're not being weird, sweetheart. We're just tired. You're sitting farther apart than usual. And Daddy didn't ask about the garden today." Emma's perceptiveness was both a blessing and a curse. Sarah knelt beside her chair, looking into those serious brown eyes. "Sometimes adults have complicated feelings about things," she said carefully. "It doesn't mean we don't love each other. We just need time to work through some difficult stuff. Did you do something bad?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. "I made a mistake," she admitted. "I should have told Daddy something important a long time ago, and now he's hurt that I waited so long." Emma considered this. "When I make mistakes, Daddy says sorry fixes most things. Some mistakes are too big for just sorry." "But Daddy loves you," Emma said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "And you love him, I can tell. So you'll figure it out." Sarah wished she shared Emma's confidence. Thursday morning brought the worst news yet. Detective Martinez called with an update on the investigation. "I'm required to inform you that we've received additional concerns about the household situation," she told Nathan over the phone. "What kind of concerns?" "Anonymous reports suggesting that Emma may be experiencing emotional manipulation related to the adult relationship developing in the home." Nathan felt rage spike through his chest. "That's ridiculous. Emma is fine. Dr. Hartwell's evaluation proved that." "Mr. Cross, I've read Dr. Hartwell's report. But given the recent discovery of Ms. Mitchell's prior connection to your family, some questions have been raised about her motivations. Her motivations. Whether her involvement with your family is based on genuine care or guilt and attachment stemming from your wife's death." Nathan sank into a chair. Someone had leaked the information about Sarah's connection to Lisa, and now it was being twisted into something sinister. "Detective Martinez, Sarah has never done anything to harm Emma. If anything, she's helped her heal from losing her mother. I understand your perspective, Mr. Cross, but I have to inform you that we're escalating this case to our senior review board. There will be additional interviews, possibly psychological evaluations for all adults in the household. How long will that take? Several weeks minimum. And Mr. Cross, I have to advise you that if the review board determines there are ongoing concerns about Emma's emotional environment, they may recommend temporary placement while the investigation concludes." The words hit Nathan like a sledgehammer. "You're talking about taking Emma away from me. I'm talking about ensuring her well-being while we sort through some complex circumstances." After Detective Martinez hung up, Nathan sat in his kitchen staring at the phone. The investigation that had started as a routine inquiry was spiraling into something that could destroy his family. He called Derek, who answered on the first ring. "It's getting worse," Nathan said without preamble. "They're talking about removing Emma from the home." Derek was quiet for a long moment, because of the connection to Lisa. "Someone leaked that information, and now they're suggesting Sarah manipulated her way into our lives out of guilt or some kind of psychological compulsion?" "Nathan, you have to ask yourself, is there any truth to that?" "No," Nathan said immediately, then stopped. "I don't think so. I don't know anymore. Here's what I think you need to consider," Derek said carefully. "Maybe it doesn't matter whether Sarah consciously sought you out or not. Maybe what matters is whether her presence in Emma's life is healthy regardless of how it started. The investigation team doesn't see it that way. Then maybe it's time to make a difficult choice." Nathan knew what his brother was suggesting before Derek said it. If Sarah steps back voluntarily, if she removes herself from the equation, the investigation goes away. Emma stays with you, and you can rebuild your life without this complication. Sarah isn't a complication. She's family. She's a woman you've known for 4 months who has a psychological connection to your dead wife, Nathan. I know you don't want to hear this, but from the outside this looks unstable at best and manipulative at worst. That evening, Nathan found Sarah in the garage apartment packing her belongings into the same worn suitcase she'd brought with her months earlier. "What are you doing?" Sarah looked up, her face streaked with tears. "What I should have done the day you found out about Lisa. I'm leaving. I didn't ask you to leave. You didn't have to. Nathan, they're going to take Emma away because of me. Because of my connection to Lisa, because of the questions about my motivations, because I was too selfish and scared to tell you the truth when I should have." She folded a shirt with shaking hands. "I won't be responsible for Emma losing her father. I won't be the reason your family gets torn apart." Nathan sat down heavily on the futon. "Where will you go?" "Back to the shelter, I guess. Maybe I can get my old job back at the library eventually." "Sarah, you don't have to do this." She stopped packing and looked at him. "Do you trust me?" "Nathan? Really trust me?" Nathan opened his mouth to say yes, then found he couldn't. The doubt was there, small but persistent, planted by weeks of investigation and questioning and his own grief-fueled fears. "I want to," he said honestly. "But you don't." Sarah nodded like she'd expected that answer. "I understand. I kept something huge from you. I let you fall in love with me while hiding the fact that I was there when your wife died. How could you trust me after that?" "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," Sarah said quietly. "Trust is the foundation of everything. And I broke it. Maybe not intentionally, but I broke it nonetheless." She zipped up her suitcase. "I love you, Nathan. I love you and Emma more than I thought possible. And because I love you, I'm walking away before I cause any more damage. Emma will be heartbroken. Emma will recover. Children are resilient. She has you, and that's enough." Nathan watched Sarah finish packing, feeling like something essential was being ripped away from him. But he couldn't find the words to stop her, couldn't overcome the doubt and fear that had been growing since he learned about her connection to Lisa. "Will you tell her goodbye?" Sarah shook her head. "It's better if I just go. Tell her I had to go take care of something important, and that I'll always remember our time together. That's not enough. It has to be." Sarah picked up her suitcase and looked around the small apartment that had been home for 4 months. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving me a place to heal, for letting me be part of Emma's life, for showing me what family feels like." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Nathan, when you explain this to Emma someday, please tell her that leaving wasn't about her. Tell her she's the most wonderful little girl I've ever known, and that knowing her made me a better person. Sarah." But she was already walking away, her suitcase rolling behind her across the yard, past the garden they'd planted together, past the life they'd built as a family. Nathan stood in the doorway of the empty apartment and watched the woman he loved disappear into the Portland night. Emma discovered Sarah was gone the next morning when she ran to the garage apartment to show her a picture she'd drawn during art class. Nathan found his daughter standing in the empty room, confusion and devastation written across her small face. "Where's Sarah, Emma?" asked her voice small. Nathan knelt beside her, his heart breaking. "She had to go away for a while, sweetheart." "When is she coming back?" Nathan couldn't find the words to explain that Sarah wasn't coming back, that the investigation and doubt and fear had driven her away. "I don't know, baby." Emma stared at the empty apartment for a long moment, then began to cry, not the noisy tears of a tantrum, but the quiet, broken sobs of a child who'd lost someone important for the second time in her young life. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." Then why did she leave? Why did Sarah leave like Mommy did? Nathan pulled Emma into his arms, holding her while she cried for the woman who had become a mother figure, who had read her bedtime stories and helped with homework and taught her how to grow a garden. Sometimes adults have to make really hard choices. Nathan said the words feeling inadequate, even as he spoke them. "I want Sarah back," Emma sobbed. "I want her to come home. I know, baby. I want that too." But Nathan wasn't sure that was true anymore. Part of him missed Sarah desperately. Her laugh, her gentleness with Emma, the way she made their house feel like a home. But another part of him wondered if Derek was right, if Sarah's presence had been based more on guilt and psychological compulsion than genuine love. The investigation team was pleased by Sarah's departure. Detective Martinez called that afternoon to inform Nathan that with the complicating factor removed, the formal investigation would likely be concluded within the week. "Emma's welfare has always been our primary concern," she said. "With Ms. Mitchell no longer in the household, those concerns have been addressed." Nathan should have felt relief. Instead, he felt empty. Emma stopped talking again. Not completely. Not like after Lisa died, but she became quiet and withdrawn. She picked at her meals, showed little interest in the garden that had been her pride and joy, and asked every few days when Sarah was coming home. Nathan tried everything he could think of. He read her favorite stories, made her favorite food, spent extra time with her after work, but nothing filled the Sarah-shaped hole in their lives. A week after Sarah left, Emma's teacher called. "I'm concerned about Emma," Mrs. Patterson said. "She's been withdrawn in class, and yesterday she told me that people she loves always leave." "Is everything okay at home?" Nathan felt like he was failing everyone, Emma, Sarah himself. In trying to protect his daughter from an investigation, he'd removed the person who made her happiest. "We're going through a difficult transition," he told Mrs. Patterson. "Would it help if Emma talked to the school counselor?" Nathan almost laughed. More counseling, more evaluation, more adults asking Emma about her feelings and her home life, and whether she felt safe. "Maybe," he said. "Let me think about it." That evening, as Nathan tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at him with those serious brown eyes. "Daddy, do you think Sarah is okay?" Nathan thought about Sarah, probably back in a homeless shelter or sleeping rough again. Her brief taste of family and stability ripped away by circumstances beyond her control. "I hope so, sweetheart. I miss her. I miss her too." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said something that broke Nathan's heart completely. "I wish I was better at keeping people from leaving." Nathan gathered his daughter in his arms, feeling like the worst father in the world. "Emma, listen to me. You did not make Sarah leave. You did not make Mommy leave. Sometimes things happen that are nobody's fault, and grown-ups have to make hard choices. But if I was better—" "You are perfect exactly as you are," Nathan said fiercely. "You are kind and smart and funny and brave. Anyone who gets to love you is lucky." But even as he said the words, Nathan wondered if he'd made the worst mistake of his life by letting Sarah walk away. Nathan spent 2 weeks trying to convince himself that letting Sarah leave had been the right decision. The CPS investigation was indeed wrapping up quickly with no further concerns. Emma was safe in his custody. Life could return to normal. Except normal felt like a hollow mockery of the life they'd built together. Emma continued to withdraw. She stopped asking about the garden, stopped showing interest in her art projects, stopped engaging with the world in the vibrant way Sarah had encouraged. At night, Nathan would hear her crying quietly in her room, and every sob felt like an accusation. "You let her go. You chose fear over love. You broke our family. Derek tried to be supportive, but even he seemed to recognize that something essential had been lost. Give it time, he told Nathan over coffee one Saturday morning while Emma listlessly played in the backyard. She'll adjust. Will she? Or will she just learn that people leave so there's no point in loving them? Derek studied his brother's face. You're having second thoughts. I'm having all the thoughts, Nathan said, including the one where I realize I may have made the biggest mistake of my life. Nathan, she was there when Lisa died, Derek. She held her hand. She heard her last words about Emma and me. Nathan stared out at the garden, now neglected and overgrown. What if that wasn't a complication? What if that was fate? What if the universe gave us Sarah for a reason, and I was too scared to trust it? Derek was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I don't know. I don't even know where she is. Finding Sarah was easier than Nathan expected, and harder than he could have imagined. The shelter downtown told him she'd stayed there for 3 nights, then disappeared. The library said she hadn't come in looking for work. It was Mrs. Rodriguez from the Bridge Club who finally gave him a lead. There's a woman who matches that description who comes to the food bank on Tuesdays and Fridays, she told Nathan when he worked up the courage to ask. Blonde hair, keeps to herself. Might be her. Tuesday afternoon, Nathan left Emma with Derek and drove to the community center where the food bank operated. He felt sick to his stomach as he scanned the line of people waiting for assistance, looking for a familiar face. He found her near the back of the line, her head down, wearing clothes he didn't recognize. She looked thinner, more fragile, like the past 2 weeks had aged her years. Sarah. She looked up startled, and Nathan saw the full impact of what the past 2 weeks had done to her. Dark circles under her eyes, a brittleness to her movements that spoke of stress and poor sleep. Nathan. Her voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Looking for you. You shouldn't be here. If CPS finds out, the investigation is closed, Nathan said. They dropped the case after you left. Something flickered in Sarah's eyes, relief mixed with pain. Good. That's good. Emma's safe. No, Nathan said firmly. Emma's not safe. She's heartbroken. She's stopped talking, stopped engaging with anything that used to make her happy. She cries herself to sleep, asking when you're coming home. Sarah's face crumpled. Nathan, please don't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm asking you to come home. I can't. Why not? Because you don't trust me. Because you'll always wonder if I manipulated my way into your lives. Because Emma deserves better than a relationship built on doubt and secrets. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're right. I didn't trust you. I let fear and doubt and other people's opinions matter more than what my heart knew to be true. He paused, gathering courage. But Sarah, I've had 2 weeks to think about everything. About that first day at the bus stop, about the months we spent building a life together. About the way you loved Emma. And the way she loved you. Nathan, I don't care that you were there when Lisa died. I don't care that you didn't tell me immediately. What I care about is that you held my wife's hand when she was scared that you heard her last words about our family, and that somehow, whether by chance or fate or divine intervention, you found your way to us when we all needed healing. Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I love you, Nathan continued. Emma loves you. We want you to come home. Not as an employee or a convenient arrangement, but as family. Real family. What if people talk? What if CPS gets involved again? Then we'll fight them. Together. As a family. Nathan reached out and took her hands. Sarah. I spent 18 months being afraid of loving someone and losing them again. But these past 2 weeks showed me something worse than loss regret. The regret of letting fear win over love. Sarah looked down at their joined hands. I was so afraid you'd think I engineered our meeting somehow, that I'd sought you out because of guilt about not saving Lisa. Did you? No, Sarah said immediately. Meeting you was the most random, beautiful accident of my life. Learning about Lisa later was terrifying, because it felt like too much of a coincidence, but I swear to you, Nathan, I didn't know who you were when Emma hugged me that day. Nathan believed her. Maybe it was faith, maybe it was hope, maybe it was just the recognition that love requires trust, even when circumstances seem impossible. Then come home, he said simply. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, searching his face. Are you sure? Really sure. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. What about Emma? What if she's angry with me for leaving? Nathan smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. Emma has been asking every day when you're coming home. She's made you 17 welcome back cards that are currently covering her bedroom wall. Fresh tears spilled down Sarah's face. 17. She's been busy. Sarah stepped out of the food bank line and into Nathan's arms. He held her tight, feeling pieces of himself clicking back into place. We need to talk about everything Sarah said against his chest. About Lisa, about what I remember from those days, about the things she said. We will. We have time for all of that. But right now, I just want to take you home to Emma. The drive back to the house was quiet, both of them nervous about what came next. When they pulled into the driveway, Emma was waiting on the front porch with Derek, her face pressed against the window. The moment she saw Sarah get out of the car, Emma exploded through the front door. Sarah, Sarah, you came back! Sarah knelt on the sidewalk just in time to catch Emma as she launched herself into her arms. Both of them were crying, holding each other like they were afraid it was a dream. I missed you so much, Emma sobbed. I thought you weren't coming back ever. I missed you too, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I left. Are you staying now? For real? Sarah looked over Emma's head at Nathan, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Sarah said. I'm staying for real. Derek approached cautiously, and Sarah prepared herself for another confrontation. Instead, he extended his hand. I owe you an apology, he said. I let my worry about Nathan and Emma cloud my judgment about who you are as a person. Sarah shook his hand, surprised. Thank you. Emma's been miserable without you. And watching Nathan these past 2 weeks, I've never seen my brother so lost. You're good for them. I was wrong to suggest otherwise. That evening after Derek left and Emma finally fell asleep curled up between Nathan and Sarah on the couch, like she was afraid they might disappear. Nathan and Sarah sat on the back porch talking. Tell me about those 3 days with Lisa, Nathan said quietly. Sarah took a breath, gathering her thoughts. She was scared. Not about dying. She didn't know how serious it was. But she was scared about leaving you and Emma alone. Nathan felt his throat tighten. She talked about you constantly, about how hard you worked, how much you loved Emma, how worried she was that you'd blame yourself if something happened to her. She was right to worry about that. She made me promise something, Sarah said softly, the night before she died when the doctors were getting worried, but still thought they could fix the clot. She made me promise that if anything happened, I would find a way to tell you that Emma would be okay, because she had the best father in the world. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Did you think about that promise when you met us at the bus stop? No, Sarah said honestly. I wasn't thinking about anything except my own grief that day. But later, after I'd been living here for a while and started to remember, I wondered if maybe Lisa had something to do with bringing us together. What do you mean? Sarah looked up at the stars. I don't usually believe in that kind of thing, but the timing was so perfect. Emma finding me on the worst day of my life, exactly when you both needed someone to help heal. You offering me a home exactly when I needed family. All of us finding each other when we were broken and helping put each other back together. Nathan thought about that. Lisa always said she believed in guardian angels. Maybe she found a way to be ours. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, processing everything that had happened. Everything that had almost been lost, everything they'd found again. Sarah Nathan said eventually, "Yeah, I want to make this official. Not just the living arrangement, us. Our family. Will you marry me?" Sarah turned to stare at him. "Nathan, we just got back together an hour ago. I know, and I've wasted enough time being afraid. I love you. Emma loves you. You're already family in every way that matters." He reached for her hand. "I don't have a ring yet, and this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve, but I can't wait another day to ask. Will you marry me?" Sarah was quiet for so long that Nathan started to worry she'd say no. "Yes," she whispered finally. "Yes, but I have conditions. Anything. I want us to go to family counseling, all three of us. I want to make sure Emma's really okay with this, and I want us to learn how to communicate better so we never go through something like this again." Nathan nodded. "Agreed. And I want to be involved with Emma's relationship with Lisa's memory. I don't want to replace her mother or pretend she didn't exist. I want to help Emma honor Lisa while also building something new. I love that idea. And I want a long engagement. 6 months at least. Time to make sure this is right for everyone." Nathan smiled. "Whatever you need." Sarah leaned over and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of hope. "Then yes, Nathan Cross. I'll marry you." The news of their engagement spread through the neighborhood like wildfire, and the responses surprised everyone. Mrs. Chen was the first to show up at their door carrying a casserole and wearing an expression of deep remorse. "I owe you all an apology," she said, standing awkwardly on their front porch. "I was the one who called CPS. I thought I was protecting Emma, but I realize now I was just being a judgmental old woman who didn't understand your family." Nathan started to respond, but Mrs. Chen held up her hand. "Let me finish. I've been watching Emma these past 2 weeks while you were gone," she said to Sarah. "I've seen how heartbroken that child was, how lost Nathan looked, how wrong everything felt without you here." She handed Sarah the casserole. "I spent 40 years married to a good man, and I know love when I see it. You three love each other, and that's all that matters." Sarah accepted the casserole with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Call me Dorothy. And if anyone gives you trouble about your family, you send them to me. I'll set them straight." The support continued to pour in. Emma's teacher sent a note congratulating them on their engagement and expressing relief that Emma was happy again. The neighbors who had quietly defended their arrangement during the investigation came forward with offers of help with wedding planning. Most surprising was the call from Detective Martinez. "I wanted to apologize for the stress our investigation caused your family," she told Nathan. "After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, it's clear that Emma has been thriving in your unconventional but loving household." She paused. "For what it's worth, I think you all found each other for a reason. Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose." Dr. Hartwell recommended a family counselor named Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who specialized in blended families and childhood grief. Their first session was awkward, with Emma shy about talking to another stranger about her feelings. But Dr. Walsh had a gentle approach that put them all at ease. "Emma, can you tell me what it was like when Sarah left?" she asked during their second session. Emma looked at Sarah, then back at Dr. Walsh. "It was like when Mommy died, but different. With Mommy, I knew she couldn't come back, even though I wanted her to. With Sarah, I thought maybe she didn't want to come back. And how do you feel now that she's back happy? But also scared that she might leave again?" Dr. Walsh turned to Sarah. "How do you respond to that fear?" "I want to promise Emma that I'll never leave, but I've learned that life is unpredictable. What I can promise is that I'll never leave by choice. Emma is stuck with me now." Emma giggled at that. "Stuck with you?" "Completely stuck. Whether you like it or not, you're my daughter now. In my heart, you already are. What about my real mum? It was the question they'd all been dreading, but Sarah answered without hesitation. Your mum will always be your mum. Nothing can change that. I'm not trying to replace her or make you forget her. I'm just hoping there's room in your heart for both of us. Emma considered this seriously. Like how I love Daddy and Uncle Derek, but different kinds of love. Exactly like that. Dr. Walsh nodded approvingly. Emma, how does that feel to you? Good, Emma said. I think Mommy would like Sarah. They're both nice and they both love me and Daddy. The sessions continued weekly, helping them navigate the complex emotions of grief, love, and blended family dynamics. Dr. Walsh helped them create new traditions that honored Lisa's memory while building their own family identity. They started having Lisa nights once a month, where they'd look at photos, share memories, and do things Lisa had loved, like making pancakes for dinner or watching old movies. Emma began talking about her mother more naturally, sharing memories without the crushing sadness that had defined her grief before. Sarah integrated herself into these conversations carefully, asking questions about Lisa, helping Emma preserve precious memories, never competing with a ghost, but honoring the woman who had given Nathan and Emma life. The wedding planning became a community affair. Dorothy Chen insisted on organizing the reception. Mrs. Rodriguez offered her backyard for the ceremony. Emma's teacher helped design the invitations as an art project. Most importantly, Derek stepped up in ways Nathan hadn't expected. He took charge of the legal aspects, helping Nathan and Sarah navigate the formal adoption process that would make Emma legally Sarah's daughter after the wedding. I was wrong about you, Derek told Sarah one evening as they worked on adoption paperwork at the kitchen table. I let my fear for Nathan and Emma override my judgment about your character. You were trying to protect them. I understand that. But I almost destroyed something beautiful in the process. Derek looked up from the papers. Sarah, I need you to know Emma's adoption isn't just a legal formality. You're becoming part of our family, and that means you're stuck with me too. Sarah laughed. I'm starting to understand that stuck is a term of endearment in your family. The highest form of endearment, Derek confirmed. As spring turned to summer, their garden came back to life under Sarah's patient care. She and Emma planted new vegetables, adding herbs that would be ready for their wedding reception. The garden became a symbol of their family, something that had been neglected during their separation, but with attention and love had grown back stronger. Emma threw herself into wedding preparations with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster. She insisted on being both flower girl and ring bearer, designed place cards for the reception, and practiced walking down the aisle with the family's elderly neighbor's dog as a flower girl companion. This is going to be the best wedding ever, Emma announced one evening after a particularly intensive rehearsal in the backyard. Why's that? Nathan asked, scooping her up for a hug. Because we're not just getting married. We're becoming a real family. We've been a real family for months, sweetheart. I know, Emma said seriously. But now it's going to be official. Now Sarah gets to be my mum for real, and nobody can say it's wrong. Nathan felt his throat tighten. Is that what you want? For Sarah to be your mum? Emma looked at Sarah, who was hanging lights for the reception. I want both. I want to remember my first mom who I loved, but who had to go to heaven. And I want Sarah to be my second mom, who gets to stay here and love me every day. That sounds perfect, Nathan said. I think so too. 3 days before the wedding, they had one final family counseling session. How are you all feeling about the wedding? Dr. Walsh asked. Excited, Emma said immediately. And happy. And a little nervous because lots of people will be watching. What about you, Nathan? Grateful, Nathan said, taking Sarah's hand. A year ago, I thought my chance at happiness was over. Now I'm marrying my best friend and Emma's getting the mother she deserves. And Sarah. Sarah looked at Nathan and Emma, these two people who had saved her life in every way that mattered. Like I'm the luckiest woman in the world. Like I'm finally coming home. Dr. Walsh smiled. I think you're all going to be just fine. That evening, as they sat on the back porch watching Emma chase fireflies in the garden, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Do you think Lisa would approve? He asked Sarah quietly. Sarah thought about the scared woman she'd comforted in a hospital room 18 months ago, the mother who had worried about her husband and daughter facing life without her. I think she'd be proud of how you raised Emma. I think she'd be grateful that Emma has another mother to love her, and I think she'd be happy that you found love again. I hope so. Sarah squeezed his hand. Nathan. You know what Lisa's last words were? The very last thing she said before she lost consciousness. Nathan shook his head. She said, tell them to be happy. Tell them not to be afraid to love again. Nathan felt tears prick his eyes. She really said that. She really said that. So I think she'd approve of tomorrow very much. Emma ran over to them, breathless and glowing with excitement. The fireflies are everywhere. It's like they're here for the wedding. Nathan scooped his daughter into his lap, and Sarah wrapped her arms around both of them. In the gathering dusk, surrounded by the garden, they'd grown together, they sat as a family on the eve of making it official. Tomorrow they would stand before their community and promise to love and cherish each other through whatever life brought. But tonight, they were already home. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect June day that Portland rarely delivered. Sarah woke in the guest room of Dorothy Chen's house where she'd spent the night according to Dorothy's firm beliefs about wedding traditions. Emma had insisted on waking up with Sarah arriving at Dorothy's door at 7 a.m. with her flower girl dress and an armload of excitement. It's wedding day, Emma announced, bouncing on Sarah's temporary bed. Are you ready to marry Daddy? I'm ready, Sarah said, pulling Emma into a hug. Are you ready to be my daughter? I've been ready forever, Emma said seriously. I picked out something special for you. Emma ran to her overnight bag and pulled out a small wrapped box. I made this with Uncle Derek. Well, he helped with the important parts. Sarah opened the box to find a delicate necklace with a small pendant, 2 overlapping hearts, one engraved with Lisa and one with Sarah. Uncle Derek said it was important that we remember Mommy today too, Emma explained. So I asked him to make this. 1 heart for each mom, and they're connected because you're both part of our family. Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. Emma, this is the most beautiful gift I've ever received. Uncle Derek has one for Daddy too, but it's different. A keychain. Boys don't really wear necklaces. Dorothy appeared in the doorway with coffee and breakfast. Girls, we have exactly 3 hours to get ready, and I've appointed myself Chief of Operations. Sarah, eat something. Emma, let's practice your flower girl walk one more time. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah's hair was styled by Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter, who owned a salon. Her dress, a simple but elegant ivory gown found at a consignment shop, was pressed and perfect. Emma's dress was lavender, her hair adorned with fresh flowers from their garden. At 11:30, Derek arrived to pick them up. Ready, he asked, offering Sarah his arm. Ready, Sarah confirmed, though her stomach was fluttering with nerves. The backyard reception area had been transformed. White chairs arranged in neat rows faced a small arch covered in climbing roses and ivy. Neighbors had contributed flowers, lights, and decorations until the space looked like something from a magazine. Sarah could see Nathan at the front, wearing his best suit and looking nervous. His eyes found hers across the yard, and his face broke into a smile that made her heart race. The ceremony was small and intimate, about 30 people, mostly neighbors and Emma's teacher, with Derek's family, and a few co-workers from the construction site, Dr. Walsh sat in the front row, beaming with pride at her successful family. Emma walked down the aisle first, taking her ring-bearer duties very seriously, while scattering flower petals with artistic flair. She reached Nathan and whispered something that made him laugh, then took her place beside them. Derek walked Sarah down the aisle, and when they reached Nathan, he placed Sarah's hand in his brother's. "Take good care of each other," Derek said quietly. The officiant was a kind woman from the community center, where they'd first met, and she kept the ceremony simple and heartfelt. "Marriage is not just about the love between two people," she said. "It's about the family that love creates, the community that supports it, and the promise to choose each other every day." When it came time for vows, Nathan went first. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady, despite the emotion in his eyes a year ago, "you were a stranger, crying on a bench, and I was a man who'd forgotten how to hope. Today you're my best friend, my partner, and the mother Emma deserves." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "You've taught me that love doesn't diminish when it's shared, it multiplies. That family isn't just about blood, it's about choosing to show up for each other every single day. That grief and joy can coexist, that honoring the past doesn't mean sacrificing the future." Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. "I promise to love you, to trust you, to choose you every day for the rest of my life. I promise to be the husband you deserve and to build the family we've all dreamed of." Sarah's hands were shaking as she began her vows. "Nathan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. 8 months ago I had given up on everything good in life. I thought I was too broken to deserve love, too damaged to be part of a real family." She looked at Emma, then back at Nathan. "You and Emma saved my life not just by offering me shelter, but by showing me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up for each other, especially when it's hard." Sarah slipped Nathan's ring onto his finger. "I promise to love you both fiercely and faithfully. I promise to honor Lisa's memory while building our own traditions. I promise to be the mother Emma deserves and the wife you can count on. And I promise that no matter what challenges we face, we'll face them together as a family." The officiant smiled. "Nathan and Sarah have asked Emma to share some words as well." Emma stepped forward, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I wrote this myself," she announced proudly, then began to read in her clear, serious voice. "Today is the best day ever, because my daddy is marrying Sarah and we're becoming a real family. I know some people think families have to look a certain way, but I think families just have to love each other." Emma looked up at them both. "Sarah, you're the best mum I could ask for besides my first mum who's in heaven. Daddy, you're the best dad in the whole world. And I'm really good at being a daughter, so I think we're going to be perfect together." The audience laughed, and even the officiant was wiping her eyes. "By the power vested in me by the state of Oregon, and with the blessing of this community, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Nathan, you may kiss your bride." Nathan cupped Sarah's face in his hands and kissed her softly, while Emma cheered and the small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was exactly what they'd hoped for, relaxed, joyful, and full of the people who'd supported them through the hardest times. Dorothy had outdone herself with the food, and the garden provided the perfect backdrop for photos and celebration. During dinner, Derek stood to give a toast. "A year ago, my brother made what I thought was the worst decision of his life. He began earning laughs from the crowd. He invited a stranger to live in his garage and care for his daughter." Derek's expression grew serious. "I was wrong. What Nathan did was recognize something I was too afraid to see, that sometimes the people who save us are the ones who need saving themselves." He raised his glass. "Sarah, you've given my brother back his smile and my niece back her laughter. You've shown all of us that family isn't about perfection, it's about presence. To Nathan, Sarah, and Emma, may you always choose each other every single day." As the evening wound down and neighbors began to clean up, Nathan found Sarah sitting at their table watching Emma dance with Derek to music from a small speaker. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Cross?" Sarah smiled at the name. Like I'm dreaming and I hope I never wake up. It's real, Nathan assured her, taking her hand. All of it. The wedding, the family, the love. It's all real. Emma ran over to them, breathless and glowing. This was the best wedding ever. Can we do it again next year? Sarah laughed. I think once is enough, sweetheart. But we can have anniversary parties every year. Good. I'm already planning next year's decorations. As they gathered their things and prepared to go home, really home as a married family, Sarah felt overwhelmed by gratitude, not just for Nathan and Emma, but for the entire journey that had brought them here, for the grief that had broken her open enough to let love in, for Emma's brave heart that had seen past appearances to need, for Nathan's willingness to trust in something bigger than fear, for the community that had supported them even when they didn't understand. That night, after Emma was tucked into bed, and the last of the wedding dishes were done, Nathan and Sarah sat on their back porch as husband and wife. Do you think we'll remember this feeling? Sarah asked, curled against Nathan's side. Which feeling? The feeling that everything is exactly as it should be, that we're exactly where we belong. Nathan thought about that. I want to remember it. I want to remember that love won, that choosing to trust each other even when it was scary led us to this moment. They sat quietly for a while, listening to the sounds of their neighborhood settling into sleep. Nathan Sarah said eventually, Yeah, I need to tell you something important. Nathan tensed slightly, old fears flaring. What is it? Sarah smiled and took his hand, placing it on her still flat stomach. You're going to be a father again. Nathan's eyes widened. Are you about 6 weeks along? I wanted to be sure before I said anything. Nathan stared at her in wonder, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like joy and possibility, and the future they were building together. Emma's going to be over the moon, he said, when they finally broke apart. She's going to be the best big sister in the world. They held each other under the stars, marveling at how much life could change in a year. From a crying woman on a bus stop bench to a wedding day to a growing family, it all felt impossible and inevitable at the same time. 18 months later, Nathan stood in their backyard, watching Emma push her baby brother on a swing set Derek had built for his first birthday. Sarah was inside nursing their newborn daughter, and the garden was fuller than ever, vegetables and flowers and berry bushes that would feed their growing family for years to come. The children who had helped them find each other had become passionate advocates for other families like theirs. Emma's school project on different kinds of families had won first place and prompted the school to revise their family unit curriculum. Their story had been featured in the local newspaper, leading to speaking engagements about foster care adoption and the many forms love could take. Sometimes love doesn't arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it comes wrapped in crisis and carried by a 6-year-old's intuition that a stranger needs a hug. Sometimes the person who saves you is the one sitting alone on a bench, holding on to hope by a thread. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you that second chances exist, that broken doesn't mean beyond repair, that sometimes all someone needs is to be seen, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our family. We share stories every week that remind us that love always finds a way, that kindness is never wasted, and that the most beautiful families are sometimes the ones we choose. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that their story isn't over yet. Sometimes the best chapters are still unwritten, waiting for that one moment of courage when someone chooses to stop, to see, to help, to love. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe in second chances, and tell us about a time when kindness changed your life. Your stories matter, and they inspire us to keep believing in the power of love, to heal, to hope, and to make broken things beautiful again. Thank you for watching, And remember, sometimes the family we need finds us exactly when we need them most.